Thank you for attending and welcome to this module on microeconomics. So far we've considered the basic economic ideas. Now we're going to progress on to economic structure. We've defined the main economic problem. However, while scarcity and choice are available to understand the process through which we all identify the nature of economics, in reality the choices that we are faced with are determined by the type of economy in which we find ourselves, the economic system in which a particular country indulges. Now this gets very complex in reality with very many attempts from different societies to try different types of economic system. However, traditionally there are three main types of economic system that conceptually exist in which countries have indulged. The first, which we'll all be familiar with, is the market economy. Second, the command economy. And last, the planned economy. We're going to now work through each of these systematically till we've understood the concept of each of these types of economy and you've got a firm grasp of what it is we're trying to appreciate. The market economy. Here millions of households and thousands of firms interact as buyers and sellers in the market for goods and services. The price and the price system, or the price mechanism, allocate values to goods based on demand and supply properties of the good and service bought or brought to market. Economic theory from a Western free market perspective believes that prices are, in conjunction with the free market or the market mechanism, the best way of handling economic problems. As we've already established, Adam Smith referred to the market mechanism and his invisible hand in The Wealth of Nations, which was his book, in which he said an invisible hand would guide resource allocation between private and social interests in the most efficient and effective way. This way of thinking became the underpinning of theoretical economics from a free market perspective. In a market economy, government intervention is limited. Issues involving this include national defence, limitation of monopoly power, maintaining and servicing the national money stock, taxation issues, and also protection and maintenance of firm or private sector rights to conduct business. It could be argued that the fundamental representation of the market economy occurs in the United States of America. However, that's been criticised from several approaches, the most known being people such as Austrian theorists. Now that's not a geographical label, that is a theoretical label. It's a philosophical label which argue that scope exists for improvement in a truly free market. We'll now move on to the command economy, also known as the centrally planned economy. Centralised decision making occurs in government within the economy in which all enterprises are state owned or under state regulation, and central planning boards make enterprise decisions daily. Central planners determine the collective preferences of consumers and manufacturing enterprises. That, as we've discussed, contrasts with market economies and the use of price system to indicate consumer preference, which elevates the consumer to a position of sovereign in context of resource allocation. And the reason that consumers are thought to be sovereign is that the decisive power of consumers to determine the amount and pattern of production by freely choosing goods and services in accordance with their preferences. Adam Smith, in his rejection of mercantilism, turned to the goal of economic activity to satisfying the consumer rather than the producer. Neoclassical economics builds many of its theories on the notion of consumer equilibrium. Given the growth of large corporations with huge advertising budget, Galbraith and others have challenged the view of the influence of others, also the increase in the role of government and the importance of merit goods have reduced the power of the individual consumer within modern economies. Karl Marx, in Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto, criticised the market system and became the tenant for much of the thought process behind central planning in the last 5 decades. Marx maintains that the class conflict combined with elevated technology should reallocate resources from a command perspective and eliminate much structural unemployment and underemployment of market economies. Monopoly power of industrial and commercial organisations dominate the control of resources in such a way that the demand and supply becomes corrupted and can be used to make even government ineffective or pressurised. Key features of a command economy. Government determines and controls allocation of resources, production targets of all sectors of an economy, determination of wage, distribution of income and wealth stock, ownership of most productive resources and property, all long-term plans for economic growth of the country. Artificially low price structures result in queues being widespread criticism of a command economy in recent years. Now, moving on to the next economy, which is by far the most widespread in the world, that of the mixed economy. In a pure sense, the free market and planned economies occur in theory and not in reality. However, hybridized systems of planned and free market designs can be found all over the globe, in reality making these systems the option of choice for many countries. The mixed economy is indeed the characteristic form of economic organisation within the global economy. Here, private and public sectors have a role to play in economic organisation and resource allocation involving a planning element, both publicly by government and privately by enterprise, and interaction occurring via market forces for government, businesses and labour market. While public-run industries through the nationalisation of industry may exist, there is an increasing trend towards privatisation of industry and services that previously existed in this form. In the mid-1970s in the UK, public and private industries form a 50-50 split of the economy in terms of importance. Governmental responsibility extends to healthcare, social services, education and defence. Nationalised industries, coal, iron, steel, railways, gas, water, telephone and electricity markets. Large-scale structural support for the declining manufacturing industry occurs. For example, car manufacture, aerospace and electronics being partnered with private sector investment and regulation and control. The 1970s to date, the strength of the public sector substantially becomes weakened or reduced. Widespread privatisation, policy of non-intervention when privatised companies experience financial difficulties in markets. Structural decline is allowed in large-scale heavy industries in many regions. For example, car manufacture. Former British-owned companies are rationalised by their non-UK owners. Modern political viewpoints on the major political parties in the UK are that they're responsible only for the macroeconomic management of certain merit goods, which, should they be left to the market for allocation, would be underconsumed in comparison with other well-funded developed economies in the Western world.